Welcome to Rustler's Reminiscence, stories of hope, faith, and frontier courage. Let the journey unfold. I remember the taste of dust 3 days of it, ground between my teeth until swallowing felt like thorns. When I pushed through the bat wings of the blue moon, my hand shook so hard I caught the doorframe to stay upright. The piano stopped. Men did their quick inventory: belly first, then face. Pregnant, poor, trouble. I meant to ask for water, maybe a crust. I could pawn Thomas's pocket knife tomorrow. The bartender looked me over like a stray hound scar tugging his mouth, rag polishing a glass already clean. "You lost, darling," he said. "I'm hungry." My voice sounded small. Thomas would have hated that. "We don't run charity," he said, eyes on my belly. "We don't feed future liabilities." The air tightened. Charles Morrison Lucky, to those who owed him, took the space beside me, smiling like the floor was his. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said. "Paying us a call? Water?" I said. "A bite, if you've got something stale." He plucked a cracker from a bowl. "We do have communion," he murmured. He held it over my palm, then slow so folks could see pressed it to my lips. Heat climbed my face. I pulled back. "Your husband," he said, "was careless. Died owing the bank and left you in a family way." The baby kicked firm, startled, beneath my ribs. "Thomas died pulling a boy from a flood," I said. "He didn't owe you decency." "Heroism," Morrison said. "Buys poor dinners." He let the cracker fall between my boots. "Oops." Laughter, cruelty's favorite tune. I stooped, careful with the weight I carried, and picked it up. "You should leave," he said, "before pity sours." "My land will outlast your kind," I heard myself say. "Hartwell Bottom doesn't kneel." Silence caught. His smile cooled. "What land?" "Mine." The slap came before I finished the word. Clean, quick. My head turned. Copper rose in my mouth. A glass clicked like a trigger. I kept my feet, pressed my palm to the heat on my cheek. Men studied their drinks. Morrison leaned in. "You'll take what you're given," he said, "and you'll be grateful." I reached across the bar and took the bowl of crackers. The bartender's hand slid toward the shotgun under the counter, but Morrison lifted one finger and stopped him. I tucked the bowl against my ribs like a book I had a right to read. "Thank you," I said, voice steady now. "We're done." I walked out through the hush. Noon hit hard and burned the room from my skin. My cheek throbbed with my pulse. The baby rolled again, steady, approving, as if we'd stepped over a line together. Behind me the piano started too loud and fast. I didn't turn. I crossed past the feed store and the church and climbed the narrow stairs to Mrs. Chunn's boarding house. She kept a pot simmering for those who could pay, and tea for those who could not. My hands shook again, but with a cleaner energy. Shame had been the spark. What it lit wasn't heat. It was cold and exact like a plow on stone. In my small room I set the bowl beside Thomas's ledger and the tin box with our papers. 2 things were clear as my name. I would not starve, and Charles Lucky Morrison would never again mistake my survival for a favor he could grant or take away. Thin light fell through calico. I set the crackers by the tin box and turned the brass-keyed Thomas called Luck Enough. Inside, our weatherproof things, the license and the onion skin deeds that crackled when I unfolded them. I spread the papers on the quilt and weighed the corners with the bowl. The neat black lines read, "Hartwell tract North Bottom and adjoining riverbank boundaries. A.S. surveyed." My name sat where Thomas wanted it, before and apart from his Rebecca L. Hartwell signed, and recorded 2 months before we wed. "Start in your own shoes," he'd said. I traced the surveyor's red pencil where the river bent and the ferry road rose toward town. If I leaned, I could see the blue moon's roofline from the window. The parcel that matched that Bend parcel. B was inked as mine. Not ours, mine. A knock. Steam came first, then Mrs. Chun with egg drop soup in a chipped bowl. She saw my cheek and hissed. "He hit you," she said. "He wanted the room to see," I said. She studied the papers without. Touching. "Lucky thinks he owns this town because men owe him tabs," she said. "Sheriff, Gazette, bank, but a seal makes a louder debt." I told her what I saw, the river lot, the survey, my name beside the judge's seal. She tapped the air. "Blue. Moon sits here. Ferry Landing's been Hartwell ground since before the drought. Bank took your house and stock when Thomas died. But ground isn't boards. Separate property can't be taken for another's debt," I said, the clause Thomas made me memorize. The baby shifted, reminding me I was building more than a case. Mrs. Chun poured tea from her thermos. "Lucky arrives with friends," she said. "He says town says when he means I say I ate steadier." I lifted the last paper, the chain of title, Thomas, copied from the land office, every transfer traced back to a soldier's grant. Clerk's stamp, received, recorded, indexed. Beneath, in his tidy script, "Keep originals with R, in case of flood or fools." The bank sold what it never owned, I said. Morrison planted his saloon on my ground, saying it cut a knot inside me. "He'll pretend paper doesn't matter," she said. "He'll call you liar. He'll try to make you tired." "I ain't tired," I said. "More tired of being someone's cautionary tale." "Then write what you'll say when the badges arrive." We cleared space at the bed's foot. I folded the deeds, left the chain of title open, and sharpened a pencil to a soldier's stub. I wrote the order like steps. Deed predates marriage, separate property. Survey includes river parcel. Foreclosure lists improvements, not soil. Blue Moon occupying without ground lease trespass, damages daily. File injunction. Public notice. Telegraph the bank. Telegraph the Gazette. Telegraph the territorial office. I read it twice until the words felt like iron. "Tomorrow," I said. "Land office first, then the bank, then anyone with ink." Mrs. Chun nodded. "I'll boil eggs for your pocket. Eat them before fear eats you." I lay with my hand on the baby until my breath steadied. When I rose, the room looked smaller, only because the world beyond it had shown its edges. I wasn't just hungry anymore. I was in possession. The land office smelled of paste and hot paper. I went early, before the men who need stamps to feel like owners finished their coffee. Clerk Finch blinked up from Platts, spectacles mended with twine, the look of a man who trusts rectangles. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said, "condolences. I'm here on business." I set the tin box down and spread the deed and chain of title. Finch wet his finger and ran it down columns, book to paper to book, his lips moving as if the words might buck if spoken. "Premarital conveyance," he murmured. "Separate property retained. Surveyor Klein. Judge Morrow's seal. Morrow." Before he left the bench, I said, "Not the one buying rounds at the Blue Moon." His eyelid twitched at Morrison's name. He flipped to the foreclosure record. "Hartwell Homestead Improvements, house, barn, fence, stock liens, sold, bank. Bank conveyed to Morrison." His finger paused. "But the river lots aren't listed under the foreclosure. Those are in the county ledger under original grant. Your deed carves parcel B apart." "Blue Moon sits on parcel B," I said, tapping the bend of the drawn river. Finch laid a transparent overlay. His mouth tightened. He built without a ground lease. Saloon on someone else's soil, someone else being me. He checked the empty room. "You understand the practical difficulty." "I understand the law." He noticed my bruised cheek. "Lucky thinks law is men with rifles. Lucky thinks wrong." He pulled a form. Emergency claim of trespass and demand for ejectment, pending adjudication. I can accept the filing stamp notice to the bank and the Gazette and Telegraph. The territorial office? How fast? As quick as gossip. I signed. He sanded the ink, pressed the seal. The baby turned at the thud. A coolness spread through me like air after fever. This will anger him, Finch said. It will make him show himself. We walked to the telegraph because he didn't want to send that message alone. The operator, a boy with nimble hands and a narrow neck, listened as Finch dictated. Record shows Hartwell deed precedes marriage. Covers River Lot B. Foreclosure did not convey soil. Occupant Morrison operates without lease. Notice of trespass filed. Request guidance and marshal support if necessary. The key chattered like teeth. Send to the Gazette, too, I said. Front page. And, to the bank in Red Bluff. Public notice will make this a spectacle, Finch said. It already is. Print it while my cheeks still the color of truth. He wrote a cleaner item for the paper, no codes, just facts. The boy hammered the story into wire. When he finished, the room felt wider. Back at the counter, Finch tucked my copies into a brown envelope. You'll keep these safe. I keep what's mine. If Morrison asks what I filed, he said, I'll tell him the book doesn't lie. Books are brave until someone lights a match, I said. So we'll make more than one. I left with the envelope under my arm and my chin level with the noon heat. The Blue Moon's piano started as I passed bright notes, bright day. I didn't look in. I had ink, a stamped seal, and enough hunger to carry me the rest of the way. Evening turned the parlor the color of tea. Mrs. Chun kept the windows wide so sound could travel. Cards went quiet in the back. The street carried my name. I set Finch's envelope on the table where the seal caught the lamp and practiced breathing. Like a woman unafraid, the knock swaggered. Sheriff Dalton filled the doorway, 2 deputies at his shoulders, Harlan, with hard eyes, and a younger one still working at a steady chin. Mrs. Hartwell, he said, you'll come with us. For what charge? Forgery. Fraud on the bank. Disturbing the peace. Read the warrant. His mouth twitched. No paper needed to invite conversation. Justice'll explain. If you've a warrant, read the complainant, the charge, and the judge's hand, I said. If you haven't, you're here to borrow my feet for a kidnapping. Mrs. Chun stepped beside me, with a bread knife like a sentence we did not have to say. Faces collected in the windows. Mr. Ruiz from the livery, Miss Ada, 2 ranch hands. On the porch, a Gazette boy hovered, ink on his cuffs. You're making a scene, Dalton said. The scene arrived wearing a badge, I said. Clerk Finch filed my notice of trespass. The seal is there. Wires went to the bank and the territorial office. Lay hands without paper, and you lay them on record. The baby kicked. I set my palm to calm him and hold my voice steady. Harlan planted a hand on his gun. The young deputy looked at my bruise and swallowed. Just answer questions quiet-like? Dalton tried again. I'll do that at 10 tomorrow, in daylight, with witnesses and these papers, I said. Print a notice so the town can hear every word. If there's a warrant now, read it. If not, we're done. He chewed the choice. Folks, he told the porch, clear out so law can do its duty. No one moved. Easier to see law in. The sun, Mr. Ruiz said. And on paper, Miss Ada added. Dalton tipped his hat back. We'll be back with proper paper, he said finally, trying to make retreat sound like order. To me, you're staring a nest you can't outrun. He turned. Harlan followed with a glare that promised a darker hour. The younger deputy nodded once as if the word record had given him a place to stand. The porch exhaled relief, not cheers. My knees wobbled. Mrs. Chun set a cup in my hand and, as if by accident, leaned her shoulder against mine so I had something to rest on. That wasn't pride. "He knows the window is louder than his voice," she said. "He'll look for a room without windows." I pinned the stamped notice to the parlor window, face out. The seal shone like an honest coin. People paused to read. Across the street, a Blue Moon runner bolted toward the saloon. Later I lay counting the sheriff's words the way a widow counts. Winter wood. Enough for tonight, not for the season. The baby turned, and I pressed a hand to him, whispering what I'd told the room. Bring paper. Bring witnesses. Bring daylight. I had won a pause, not a victory. But pauses, set right, are wedges. Tomorrow I would find the next seam. Dawn came thin and gray. I had slept with the envelope under my hand. Mrs. Chun poured coffee strong enough to stand alone, and her brother Daniel walked in, trimmed and calm, a lawyer carrying daylight in his pockets. "Let's see the bones," he said. I laid out the deed, survey, and chain of title. He read without talk, only that small finger keeping time. At the foreclosure record he breathed through his nose and nodded once. Premarital conveyance. Separate property intact. The bank took improvements, not ground. The Blue Moon is sitting on your soil without a lease. Trespass from the first nail. With a fair judge we seize the premises and count damages by the day. Heat rose under my bruise and settled. Will a fair judge show his face? "We'll make him," he said. "I'll file for an injunction before noon, serve notice on Morrison, the bank, and the sheriff." Paper draws eyes. A brisk knock. Eddie Walsh slid in, ink on his cuffs, hat in his hand. He took one look at my cheek and set his notebook down like a promise. "Lucky," he said. "Wasn't born Morrison." He was Charles Maroro in Santa Fe, took deposits for freight he never hauled, left town when the books got loud. There's an old indictment gathering dust. I wired ahead. The replies came back, hot, double quotes. Mrs. Chun handed him coffee. "Can you print it?" "I can and will," he said, "but ink isn't a fence." He spent the night deputizing his drinkers. I counted a dozen tin stars by breakfast and heard talk about taking you quiet before papers and witnesses grow thick. Cold crept along my spine where courage had been warming. How soon? "Soon as the street empties," Eddie said. "They'll want dusk." Daniel had already pulled a form from his case. Pen scratching. "Then we move the clock," he said. "I file at once." Eddie set type with the alias and the fraud. "Name the sheriff if he blinks. Rebecca, you keep where sight lines are long and neighbors close." Mrs. Chun nodded. "Porch is a stage. Windows are a choir. They hate both." I looked at the papers, and then at the door. I had thought argument would do the lifting. Now I knew standing still would. Presence is a kind of hammer when the other man wants shadows. "File the injunction," I said. "I won't run." Daniel's mouth softened. Eddie's grin showed a chip he'd earned chasing a story. Outside, hooves passed careless and plenty. Mrs. Chun pressed 2 boiled eggs into my pocket and a small knife into my palm. "Eat before fear eats you," she said. "I will," I said. "And when dusk comes, I'll be on the porch." They left in a hurry that wasn't panic. I mended a rip at my sleeve because stitches steady hands. Then I pinned the stamped notice higher in the front window so even tall men would have to read it, and I opened the door to let the day in. The house felt larger when I chose not to hide. Somewhere, a hammer rang on nails that were not his to drive. The sound traveled through the morning like a dare, and I answered by sitting where everyone could see me breathe. By late afternoon, the street dressed itself for trouble. Riders idled 2 abreast. reins slack, spurs talking to the boards. I took my place on Mrs. Chun's porch with the stamped notice in the window. They came from the blue moon like a weather. Change tin stars, rifles, borrowed swagger. Morrison followed last, brim low, debtor's smile in place. "Mrs. Hartwell," he called, "you've given the town a story. Now you'll give it an ending." "The ending is a door with your name on it," I said. "You step through," he scat. "You've upset yourself, and in your condition. There's a doctor in Red Bluff who rests excitable ladies. Your papers have confused you." The crowd thickened. Mr. Ryu, Miss Ada, the Gazette boy. Sheriff Dalton lingered near the hitching rail. "You built a saloon on my ground," I said. "The book says so. The seal says so. Your choices are pay damages or leave and meet the marshal." Harlan let his coat fall to show his revolver. "You're riling the peace, ma'am." "I'm riling the habit of taking," I said. "Peace is the noise bullies make when folks stop kneeling." Morrison's smile thinned. "Retract the slander. Tell the bank you misspoke. Be out of Millbrook by dawn. Do that, and perhaps I'll see you to the next county." "Say you mean by my—" "Silence," I said. "Call it mercy. Call it what it is." I stood, slow so they could count it. The baby shifted. I set my palm to him. "You drink this town's wages and sell it back the ache in their bones. You put a piano on my soil and call it empire. You will pay for every plank and every night." Laughter sharp cut him. He pitched his voice for the porch, but let it carry. Hysteria. "She believes herself a queen." "Sheriff, do your duty." Dalton looked at the notice. "Judge'll sort paper tomorrow." The mask slid off Morrison's face. He stepped close enough for me to smell whiskey. "You think ink builds a fence," he said. "It doesn't. Men do." "Then be one," I said, "on this porch, in front of your customers." He straightened. "Shoot her," he told Harlan, not raising his voice. The street went still. Harlan's hand rose, pistol clearing leather. I felt my legs and chose not to move them. I lifted the brown envelope so the seal faced the guns. "If you're going—" "To kill a woman," I said, for the Gazette boy to hear, "aim true at the deed so the bullet finds the law first." Miss Ada sucked air. A spur rang. The young deputy took 2 steps and set himself half a pace off Harlan's sight line. "Harlan," Dalton said, voice rough. "Holster." Morrison didn't look at him. "Shoot," he said again. I kept my eyes on Harlan's gun. He kept his on my envelope. The town held its breath, as if we all shared one set of lungs. The baby rolled once. I set my shoulders against the porch post and waited to see whether the day would choose law or grief. The street held its breath. Then iron broke it. Hoofs from the south, Eddie Walsh's voice. "Make room for law." 3 riders pushed through, badges bright. Daniel walked with them. "Territorial Marshals," the lead man called, raising a ribboned writ. Orders signed by Judge Ames. "We seek Charles Mororo," calling himself Charles Morrison, wanted in Santa Fe for fraud and embezzlement. We also seized the Blue Moon's records. Harlan's pistol stalled. Dalton's jaw set. Morrison smiled. "You've got the wrong man." Eddie flashed copies. "Signatures match," he said. "Santa Fe wires it's him." The marshal turned. Morrison to the light and checked the nicked ear the wire described. "Sheriff," the marshal said, "stand aside." Dalton moved like a door letting in daylight. Borrowed deputies tugged at their pens. Stars vanished into pockets. Daniel set another page beside my stamped notice. "Injunction granted," he told the street. "Immediate seizure of premises and preservation of ledgers." "Charles Mororo," the marshal said, "you are under arrest." Harlan let his gun drop. The young deputy eyes on my envelope took. Harlan's wrist and holstered the pistol. They disarmed Morrison. His eyes closed, he leaned close. "Paper burns," he whispered. "Winter stays. When they ride on, you'll be alone with the cold." "I have kindling," I said. "It's called neighbors." They walked him through his crowd. Men who'd laughed at his jokes studied their boots. "Hold," Daniel said, pointing at the saloon. "By order of the court, the Blue Moon is seized into custody." To me, lower, "We inventory with witnesses. You sign as owner." Inside, the piano man lifted his hands and backed away. Eddie nailed a notice to the door. Mrs. Chun brought a small ledger. Bottles, kegs, the safe, account books. The young deputy helped roll Morrison's desk from the back room. In a drawer, deeds rubbed smooth, names not his. Eddie held them to the light. When the padlock clacked and the marshal kept the only key, the street exhaled no cheers, just steady. Daniel guided my hand to the line where I signed receipt of custody. Owner, Rebecca L. Hartwell. The baby, tight all afternoon, went loose and calm as if he had been waiting for that sound. Dalton touched his brim and turned away. They led Morrison. Past. He kept his voice for me. "This town will eat you." "I am to feed it," I said. "There's a difference." When the dust settled, the porch was only boards. The marshals rode with their prisoner and a wagon of ledgers that might yet teach the town what it had been living beside. The noise ended. Now came work. Tomorrow we would take possession and practice, not just on paper. Tomorrow we would make different music on ground that remembered my name. 3 months later, the street moves different. Where the Blue Moon once poured wages into dawn, the same doors now read Hartwell Community Center, flour sack, white on plank brown, letters straight as fence pickets. We kept the piano and changed. It's songs. On weekdays, the front room is a school. Miss Ada runs the slate with a soft voice and a hard line. The back room holds 6 cots and a scrubbed table where Dr. Alvarez stitches knife work and eases fevers. Morrison's ledgers sit locked. For evidence, the shelves opposite carry real books and a tin of crackers for any belly that walks in empty. The bar became a counter where seed sits, beside flour and where credit posted on the wall runs forward instead of down. Mr. Ruiz weighs sugar by the pound. His scale is as honest as a prayer. The young deputy has his name back, Collins, and keeps the noon watch without swagger. The old saloon safe now holds minutes and votes. We open it before meetings and close it after, so everyone sees what went in and what came out. When folks argue, they argue over lines they can run their fingers along, and the room stays human. I sleep upstairs under a patched quilt. The baby is due any week. My ankles swell if I sit wrong, but I am heavy with more than a child. The town leans toward its own voice. Supper tastes of onions and fresh bread instead of yesterday's whiskey. We placed the ferry landing in trust for the school. We set co-op prices and clinic rules. No one turned away for want of coins or forgiveness. Men who laughed that first day show up early now, hats low, hands ready to carry boards. Contrition sounds like hammers when it's real. On a Saturday with the river high and brown, a territorial carriage pulled in 2 bays, brass bright as a sermon. A gentleman stepped down in a coat that feared weather. "Calloway," he said, giving me a card. He admired the sign, the clinic, the ledger with the seriousness of a man who knows numbers can be virtues. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said at last, "the territory needs what you've done here. A development post is opening 3 counties. Funds to place, schools to start. The salary is fair. The reach is wide." We sat at the piano bench because I am not much for offices. Dr. Alvarez passed behind with a newborn. Children spilled onto the porch. Eddie pretended not to listen. I felt the baby shift and thought of the ferry bank still crooked from the flood. of winter wood not yet stacked, of the safe we open so folks can see their own decisions. It's a good offer, I said. It's bigger than this street, he said gently. This street used to be more than I could lift, I told him. Now it lifts me. If I leave now, this might sag into story. I'd rather let it set. He weighed that and nodded. There will be other posts. I'll come see your map when this has stood through a winter, I said. He shook my hand, like a man recognizing a boundary, and left with a sack of flour he insisted on paying for, which made Mrs. Chun smile into her coffee. That evening we ladled stew to anyone who wandered in. I propped my feet on a chair and watched a girl write, her name on the slate, tongue between her teeth. Eddie played low. Collins laughed with a man he'd once arrested. The baby pressed his heel against my ribs. I pressed back, not to push him into place, but to tell him we have one. After dishes, I stepped onto the porch, the same boards where I once chose to be seen. The street breathed different. Less an argument, more a promise said under one's breath. Winter will still come. Floods will test the ferry. When they do, we'll open the safe, the doors, and the ledger, and decide together what survives. I felt Thomas beside me, not as a ghost, but as the quiet line in his tidy script. Start in your own shoes. I am still standing in them. When our child arrives, I want more than a tale of a slap and a stamp. I want a town that remembers paper is only as strong as the hands that hold it open. Tomorrow I'll sell the last of the blue Moon's bottles for window glass. Tomorrow I'll sit with Collins and read the levy accounts without flinching. Tomorrow I'll write Mr. Calloway to thank him and invite him back in spring when the river runs true along a straighter bank. The work is our weather now. It cools heads, warms hands, and keeps time. Survival grows stronger the more people you let into it. I am no one's cautionary tale. I am the custodian of a town learning how to feed itself and the mother of a child who will be born into a room with a door that stays open. Thanks for riding with us through another tale from the Old West. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More adventures are waiting on the trail ahead. See you next time.